Hello, I'm Jennifer from Hunter's Home, and today we're going to be talking about some of the medicines that were used in treatments for illnesses and things like that back in the 19th century, particularly with an emphasis on how Minerva was treated in her medicines and things. Now, I am coming to you from our sitting room, which was basically Minerva's sick room there towards the end of her life. She suffered from what we now believe was malaria. At that time they called it bilious fever, and her doctor was Dr. Brown, and so we have a few of his notes that we're going to go over today, as well as some information that we found from Emily Murrell's diary. Now, to back up a little bit, Minerva was the niece of Chief John Ross and daughter of Lewis Ross, treasurer of the Cherokee Nation. And she's the reason why this mansion was built that I'm sitting in right now, that you all know now as Hunter's Home. And so whenever they came out here, the Cherokees and Minerva with her family came out here in the 1840s, late 1830s, early 1840s. They were living here. The house was built by 1845, so we're just going to say the early 40s. So whenever they came out here, at some point in time, she contracted malaria. And at this time, doctors still believed in what we know as antiphlogistic medicine. So they still thought that people kind of still subscribe to the belief that people had 4 humors in their body, and whenever one of those humors gets out of balance, that's what causes people to be sick. And so a lot of their treatments and their medicines were designed to bring those humors back into balance. They didn't really think a whole lot about germs, although germ theory was there and catching on, but it was after the Civil War ended that they were able to really start bringing that information all into a cohesive package that the doctors could start, treating people with based on what germs were and parasites and things like that. Of course, the microscope was already invented at this time, but I don't know that they had any understanding of what the parasite was that caused malaria in people, or a whole lot of how to treat that. So at the time, the Surgeon General, Thomas Lawson, his recommended treatment for people with malaria was to bleed them until their symptoms abated and then give them quinine, when, of course, we know today that if they would have just given them quinine in the beginning, that could help get those fevers and that symptoms under control. But of course, they're still bleeding people at this time. They're doing a lot of cupping to bring those humors up. I don't know if any of you have seen the Olympics, the Summer Olympics here a few years ago, where a lot of the swimmers, like Michael Phelps, for example, had these big circular bruises around his body. That comes from cupping. And so what they would do is back in the 19th century, would cup people. They would heat these, they would put fire inside this glass, this was not what they would use, but this is what we're going to use as an illustration. So you light a match and you hold it in here and you put it out, and then you stick it on your skin. And as the air cools, some kind of reaction happens in there and it causes suction. So it sucks the blood to the surface, which causes those bruises, but it also, for them, they thought brought up your illnesses and things, all those humors that needed to get into balance. It brought all that to the surface. That's why they were doing a lot of things where they were blistering people. And so that blister that rose up on whatever happened, they thought that was getting that excess humor out. So there were 4 humors, and we thought this was, or I initially thought this was more of a medieval thing, ancient Greek society type thing. With the humors. So they had black bile, they had yellow bile, they had blood, and phlegm were the 4 humors that they were looking at and thinking that was causing all the problems in people. And so whenever I read in Emily's diary, you're going to see that Dr. Brown thought that Emily had bilious fever, which was another way that they described what we know as malaria today. So we'll go ahead and look at some of those first. Let's look at her diary first. I have a couple of different sources here that we're going to talk about, and I'm just going to read. So we have Emily's diary. She kept it. Emily was the niece of George Murrell, and so she came out here to visit in the summer of 1850 and kept a diary while she was here. So that's how we know a lot of the things that were going on at the time, is through her information here. We know, what kind of preparations sort of the house is going to. Of course, this is all going to be on a visitor niece of the plantation owner's perspective. So it's not going to be the perspective of the person who actually owned the plantation, Minerva, any of the enslaved people that were out here doing the work. This is going to be all from Emily's point of view. But this is how we know a lot of the things that were going on at the time from her point of view, and we can take some of that information and we can try to recreate it out here in our programming. All right, so let's go to, so on Wednesday, the 24th of May, she says that Aunt N has been very sick all the evening and night with a violent headache. And Aunt N is Minerva. They also called her Nerve. And then we have where she's talking about, Emily herself is talking about her own illnesses. So on Monday, June the 10th of 1850, oh no, this is where she's talking about Minerva again. She says, Aunt Nerve in bed with a chill, quite sick. Men went home, and men is Araminta. Men went home. I have just finished 6 flower pots and put fresh leaves to my rosebud. Tuesday the 11th, she says, Aunt Nerve still quite sick. Dr. Brown here. Miss Ross came over from men's, Mr. Stapler having told them Aunt was very ill. I went out trying to shoot her a partridge or dove. Now that part really intrigued me whenever I read that in here, because I had read a lot of medieval studies, a lot of really early medicinal studies that were going on in Europe a long time ago. And one of the things that they would do is they would put a partridge or dove on the sole of somebody's foot and wrap it. So I was wondering if maybe that's, you know, kind of a throwback that she was talking about, but it very well could be that she was trying to get a bird for soup. So because, you know, of course we know, and I think it's probably been something that everybody has known since time began, that, you know, some version of chicken noodle soup is really good for you. So that may have been what she was doing there. Like I say, I don't know. Then we can move to the 14th. She has, so this is when Emily has gone sick. And so she says she's not feeling very well. On the 15th, she had very high fever, vomiting and purging that lasted all day. So this could be fevers. This could also be malaria, because you have fevers and chills. And so in the evening, she took a dose of blue mass and spent a wretched night. So blue mass was a thing that they took back in the 19th century that is basically just powdered mercury that they put into a liquid or something and drank, or they could take it in pill form, I suppose. President Abraham Lincoln was said to have taken this medicine as well. And mercury causes a whole lot of trouble. So I don't know if any of you have ever seen or read the book Alice in Wonderland, but you have the Mad Hatter in that book. And so the reason why they called them Mad Hatters is because they would rub mercury into their hats in the hat making process at some point in their history. And whenever it absorbs into your skin, it can cause your neurological, you know, pistons to stop firing. It causes kind of, you know, a form of insanity. It's really not good for you. It's also not good for you to ingest, but of course they didn't know this at the time. And in taking this mercury, it can cause blood pressure problems. It can cause sicknesses. It also causes your teeth to fall out. The sockets that your teeth are rooted in. It causes those to weaken and to enlarge, and so your teeth can start falling out, which causes a lot of mouth pain, which we're going to see kind of come out here in this. So she says, Emily continues on the 16th, and she says she's still in bed, so she's still sick, and Aunt Nerve is not very well either. She says Min and Mrs. Ross and Uncle George went to church. Between 11 and 12 took about 5 grains of quinine. So that's one of the really good treatments for malaria is quinine. She said this affected her considerably, and at night she took as much more. She could not sleep from the effects until after midnight. Dr. Brown is my physician. He feared it was bilious fever, but I am thankful for the escape. So Dr. Brown was treating Emily while she was here as well. And then you have Thursday the 20th. Emily says that she feels heaps better, but still very weak, and her mouth is better. So I have to do a little bit more research into that to see if maybe certain kind, how fast the blue mass takes effect to cause some troubles like that. All right, so that is Emily's. And then we also have some information here from Dr. Brown's records. We did manage to get a hold of some of his notes, fantastically enough, that he was keeping while he was treating Minerva. Okay, so now we're going to look at his notes here. I don't have a year on these. I'm not sure when it was. It could have been around the same time that Emily's discussing these issues in her diary, and then again it could be later on in Minerva's life, as the sickness progresses before she passed away. And so what we have here is, he says, saw Mrs. Murrell on Thursday 1st. She has taken sick with severe chill followed by fever, violent headache, vomiting, pain in the back, took calomel. Okay, so calomel is another version of what they called a mercury treatment. And so found her free of fever, skin moist, pulse slow, tongue coated in the center, gave quinine. Let's see here. She rested well till about midnight when she became restless. Now this, we have his notes and we've transcribed them, but some of the words were not, like how many grains that he gave her, some of the medicines that he's talking about and the treatments that they're giving her is in Latin, and or I'm assuming that it's Latin. I'm not 100% sure because the words are distorted, so I can't really quite read them very well. Friday the 2nd, feverish, stomach irritable, pain in the right side of head. He gave her calomel, discharge very bilious, vomiting. So basically she had dry heaves and she wasn't really bringing a lot of stuff up. And at night her headache was gone. He gave her some morphine in order to let her, because apparently she hadn't slept at all since she first got the attack come on. So he gave her that so that she could sleep. And then on Saturday, he gave her a little bit more quinine, looks like about 4 grains, and then gave her a little bit more that evening. And then left directions for whoever was taking care of her to give her a little bit more at the next morning. And then on Sunday, he came back and found her worse, slight fever with headache, gastric irritability. Let's see here. The symptoms abated after giving her more medicine. Then he gave her some quinine and tried to relieve her nervous irritability. She appeared much depressed in spirits, which may be attributed to bodily disease or derangement of the liver and uterus, as well as being confined in bed and not after heretofore enjoying much uninterrupted health. So this could cause her to be restless and despondent, he says. Monday the 5th, she was a little bit better and she was convalescing in bed, probably this one right here behind me. And then he gave her a little bit more quinine whenever he showed up, and then again at 9 p.m. that night. And then on Thursday, he gave her a little bit more and then released her from his care. So those are the kind of medicines that he's giving her at the time. Other things that we can expect Minerva to be treated with are things, and I'm trying to reach through here. So everything wasn't just pills and such. They also had things like this here. I'm going to hold this up. So these are fleams that they used. We have fleams and lancets. And so these are some of the things that they used to bleed people, and you have different sizes. So as you can see, this size here is quite a bit smaller than this size here. And so they fit neatly in this little case that keeps you from cutting yourself. And then we have these guys right here in this handy little case. And they do the same thing. So let's see if I can keep from cutting myself. That would be great. Do a little bit of 19th century treatment on myself. So they have things like this here. And so basically these were some of the equipment that they used. So what they would do is they would cut somebody with these, or they would, you know, cut somebody with these, and they would draw off a prescribed amount of blood from the patient. And you could do that in a couple of different ways. So what they would do is they would either cut somebody and start bleeding them out into a basin, and we don't have one of those, although I would like to get one at some point. But they would cut their patient and bleed off a prescribed amount of blood into this basin. And these basins have little, like measuring cups, where they have little marks on them that let you know how much blood you're pulling out of this person. And then also they could use the cupping method as well. So you light that match in here and put it over the skin, and it raises that the blood to the surface of the skin, right? That's how you get your bruising. And whenever you use it in conjunction with these tools and equipment, you cut the person, and then you put the cup over the site of the cut, and that actually acts as a syringe, and it forcefully pulls blood out of a person to help them kind of work on, to help them pull some of that blood out of their body. And so this gets your blood back into balance. A lot of things they gave them also help them to purge and the like, things like that. And then the last thing that we'll talk about now are one of the liquid medicines that we know about. So this is a bitters bottle from the time period, and it says Old Sachem or Sachem bitters and Wigwam tonic. That sounds pretty interesting, and I don't know if you can see that. So this is a bitters bottle, and so bitters at the time was a tonic that was given to people that contained quinine. So that's one of the reasons why it was given to people who were suffering from malarial attacks. Only problem is it also contained strychnine in high enough doses to induce vomiting. So whatever quinine managed to be absorbed by the body probably didn't do a whole lot of good, although I guess a little relief is better than nothing, except for if you add poison such as strychnine to it, and people die from strychnine poisoning. It's a pretty bad thing. So that was just a little bit of information about some of the treatments that Minerva was dealing with whenever she was fallen ill to malaria. Now we know that by 1850, and we know because of Emily's diary, by 1850 she had contracted this illness. And by 1855, she passed away from it. She passed away, I think, just shy of her 35th birthday, or it may have been her 34th birthday. And she's buried up the road here at Ross Cemetery, where her brother was originally buried out here. And so, on her death certificate, it said that she passed away from pneumonia, but some of the treatments and things that she was given most likely had a part to play in it as well. Whenever your immune system is lowered by illnesses, by depression, by all sorts of things that are going on in your life and with your body. And so as she's fallen ill to malaria and she keeps getting, sicker and sicker, and these are the treatments that she's being given, of course, her immune system probably was rather depressed, and she wasn't able to fight off infections of the lungs whenever it happened. And so she fell ill with pneumonia and passed away in January of 1855. And so a lot of the things that we know about the treatments and everything come from Dr. Brown and Emily Murrell's diaries, but they also come from, the surgeons of the time and what kind of things that they were doing around this area. Give us a really good insight into some of the treatments that she was getting. And so that's how we're able to piece together our programming and our discussions and talks that we do out here. So we take primary sources and we do the research from there, and that enables us to be able to get all of this information. I hope you guys have enjoyed this slightly morbid talk, and keep an eye out on our channel and all of our other social medias, because we'll have more, much more coming soon. Thank you.